Okay, now Lou, it's your show, right? Lou and Jim, we're going to do our forces of change exercise and planning session to touch on the future, long-range planning.
Thank you, and as we're going through this, staff will begin to hand out we're going to put you to work, is basically what we're going to do. So, this is our forces of change exercise. Now, the exercise itself is not designed to, the things in this exercise have occurred. It's not designed to look at whether these things, the options that we're giving you have occurred or haven't occurred. We're looking at events that we are telling you for the sake of this exercise have occurred or will occur. And we're actually looking to see what your response or what our responses would be to that. So the specifics of the situation or event are kind of immaterial. It really is, we are concerned about the impact that those events or events like them would have on a set of variables that we've given you that would allow us to plan for the future. Right, this is an example. This exercise is to get you thinking about the forces of change and what they may be, and what are the types of things that we'll be asking you to think about in the next year as we begin to move forward with this with the plan. You heard today on several cases, and you heard Stan say just before, that you can't plan for this. Right? You can't plan for these things. Or you heard William talk about, we had adopted our plan here, and then the next year this hit us. Right? And so the idea here is to try to build up or look at ways of building up our resilience and being more nimble in terms of moving forward with the plan. We're looking to try and spur the discussion around an external event and understanding the impacts and how it impacts us as a region. So for example, we just heard Stan talk about this. Right? So this is an example. Technology, connected and autonomous vehicles. The scenario we're talking about here is that, in this example, is that connected and autonomous vehicles become the norm. 50% of all vehicles on the road are connected or autonomous. That's the scenario that we want you to, for this example, we want you to think about. And we want you to think about how it would impact a certain set of variables. And in this case, development patterns, congestion, transit usage, or air quality. We've handed out, for each of you, each table was given a situation or event that falls within one of the 5 forces of change. And that chart on there is really to give you a way of gathering your thoughts about the subject. Okay, so for example, if we would look at congestion in terms of the CAV, I don't know, every time I say the words I stumble over. There's just so many words. So we would look at congestion, and if you had, so you thought that, okay, we believe that connected and autonomous vehicles are going to impact, we're sure that they're going to impact congestion, but we just don't know if it's going to be positive or negative. You may put the congestion letter there. So there it's on the line for certain. Now you have no idea whether it's going to impact congestion. It's not there. You may put it there. I just gave Shannon a heart attack back there, by the way. She said I was hitting the clicker and nothing was happening, and she was, because this is about as technical as I get right there, is hitting the clicker. And so, what if you are sure that it's going to have an impact and it's going to be positive? And put your B there. Or if you think it's going to have impact and it may be negative, you put your B someplace like that. Now, exactly where you put the B or where you put the mark is not as important as collecting your thoughts and having the discussion about why you think that. So there's some things that I want you to think about as you're going through the process and having this discussion at your table. Because what you're going to find is you're going to hear things like, well, it could be possible if, or it depends on, or we can make it more positive if we did this, or it only happen if we did that. Those are the sort of things, the sort of thoughts we want you to capture as you're going through this discussion at your table. we will, because there are so many tables and we're trying to, nobody's back there. The good part about me being up here is nobody's back there flashing cards at me, telling me in 30 seconds. Chapel just held up one, but I don't think it was a card that had the time on it.
There was a message.
And it was a message, yeah. As we go through the process, I want you to think about, we're going to go around to the various tables and listen to what you have to say. Then we're going to ask for volunteers. And you have 30 minutes to have your discussion. We're going to ask for volunteers to walk, and these are the things we want you to think about, and we're going to want to hear, and we're going to leave this up. So at your table, think about general thoughts about each variable in the scenario. Were they impacted positively or negatively? Were you certain of that, uncertain of that? How predictable were they? And what needs to be done to make the impacts more positive or to mitigate any of the negative ones? So for the sake of this exercise, that's what we're going to ask you to do. You have 30 minutes. Then we'll ask for volunteers. So just give us a little quick report out just on these things that we've talked about here. And staff will be walking around. If you have any questions, feel free to ask staff any questions. I guarantee you'll have the answers, but that's not what we're here for. The answers really aren't as important here as this exercise itself is having that discussion and seeing what we need to do to be able to move these things forward. So you have 30 minutes starting now.
More foreign-born immigrants, so that would be an interesting challenge. When you get down to congestion and modal options, I think this is where it really highlights the need for regional cooperation. I don't know what the purpose of this exercise was, but that was it. This really highlighted it. And I think because if you have that sort of increase in the population and you allow it to be very centralized, then what happens is your impact on public service and infrastructure, congestion, and modality is tremendous. And when you put that much pressure in one place, obviously that's going to cause challenges for that area, which then would impact the entire region.
So the importance of making sure that they're not, that you don't have that much of a population increase clustered would be important. So in terms of congestion, the challenge again would be to sort of decentralize and ensure that we were also, once again, engaging employers in supporting solutions. We heard earlier today about, I think it was the Ohio folks talking about how they encouraged employers to buy bus passes and try to, because most of these folks are going to want to seek public transportation. So we'd have to find additional creative ways to make sure that we could do that, and at the same time, we think it might be positive for public transportation because in places where public transportation maybe needs more ridership, that would be a positive. And then under modal options, obviously, again, looking for more diversity in modal options, particularly if we're decentralizing and trying to make sure that this population is spread out through the region. So the impact on public services, housing, all those things would be affected, but I think that, again, highlights the importance of decentralizing.
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, I have another commissioner who's volunteered, I know it's a joke at this point, to talk about it, and Commissioner Anderson is economy.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lou. Really appreciate it. Our scenario was Amazon chooses Southwestern Pennsylvania region for Amazon HQ2, spending $5 billion to construct facilities that will house 50,000 employees. And these 50,000 employees will be hired over the next 10 to 15 years and will have an average salary of more than $100,000 a year. We looked at this and we started a discussion with, currently as we sit here, there's 25,000 jobs wanting in Southwestern Pennsylvania in our region. These are high-tech jobs, probably paying in six figures or at least close to it, and we can't fill them. So all of a sudden we've got another 50,000 popped in on top of that. So where are they going to come? Where are these people going to come from? So looking at it from an age demographic, We think that much as people fled our area during the steel shutdown, people will flee other areas to come here for the opportunity. So we have an aging population, we have newer, I would think younger people coming in that will make the change, flood into our region, you bringing the high skills with them. So from our perspective and discussion around the table, this will lower our age demographic in order to fill the void that Amazon would create in the area here. As far as housing availability and affordability, we had it depends on who you're talking about. Now, if you're a new person and you're coming into the area, and you're probably coming, well, depending on where you're coming from, it would probably be neutral or maybe even be slightly positive. If you're here now, it would have a negative impact. So we were moving it around within the big plus sign as to depending on what that scenario is. As far as congestion, I mean, you look at this, you look at another 50,000 people in here, how could it not cause congestion? However, with the technology that we've been discussing today in the room, with the autonomous vehicles, the smart cars, all the rest of the stuff, and the possibility of just amazing technology of mass transportation, it could be minimized, but I think congestion would still go up. So where did we put that? We put that in the negative, but slightly higher on the side because of the technology that's coming along. And mobile options. I mean, as far as buses and things like mass transportation, I would think that would be a great increase. But also looking towards the technology, the amazing technology that's coming across, I think would be a positive. So in that we put that on the upper right hand corner, but closer, kind of close to the line. So that was it. But what a great discussion, and it would be amazing to stick around for about 15 years and see what's going to happen. And let's get on this one. I think it'd be a great thing for the region. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. My funding table was having some debate over who was actually going to speak for them. Was it going to be Rob? All right. So this is this one is funding. The force of change here was funding. And remember, tell them what our force of change was.
Yeah,
the scenario.
The force of change is that right now we have very heavy federal funding available for interstates and bridges, and yet the proposal from the administration is that we flip it. So instead of it being 90-10 or 80-20, it flips, and locals then become responsible for the 50-50. Okay. So and this was hot conversation over here. There was not necessarily agreement in the reasons and how it would, what the ultimate consequences would be. But interestingly enough, we all landed in the same place on the graph. I'll just say real quickly, it was seen as the opportunity to be beneficial for transit, rail, and air, for those modes of transportation, and it would cause a major shift to use more of those modes of transportation, and it would shift where people live and work. That it would be the only way you would really survive very well would be if you worked very close to where you live. That's in terms of personal impact. Now, on public service impacts, we did talk about the fact that it would probably increase the likelihood of public partnerships. Taxes would need to be, there would probably be some impact and adjustment to that. It would be more beneficial for those who lived in urban areas and probably pretty detrimental for those who live in rural areas. And then one person brought up the fact that in earlier years, we were able, like Rivertown communities had a connectivity via rail. Smaller towns, through rural areas, were able to be connected. But that has changed. We've turned that rail system oftentimes over to the trails. So how do where's the chance to reestablish that connectivity? that it's gone right now because of policies from 20, 25 years ago. So in general, when it comes to congestion and infrastructure condition, everyone agreed it was certain negative impact, and it really ranked real high out there. When it came to modal options, it was certain positive impact. When it came to job creation, we were like all over the place on the uncertain side. We went from negative to positive. So that was the outcome.
All right, thank you, Robbie.
Thank you.
We have one last force of change, and that's technology over there in the back. Look, nobody wants to grab the microphone. Look, they're just like, no, I'm not talking about it.
All right. Our assumption was that the Hyperloop is already built from Chicago to Pittsburgh going through Columbus. And it has, just like some of the figures we saw, you could basically get to Columbus in 14 minutes and get to Chicago in 29 minutes. And we're talking about a lot of freight movement and the ability to move, 13.8 million passengers. So those are all assumptions that are already made. We kind of backed up a little bit and said, well, what's going to happen when this is being built? So we had troubles kind of aligning with this is already in place. Let's talk about what the immediate impact is going to be. The first thing we got hung up on was really, okay, where is that endpoint in Pittsburgh? Not worrying about Columbus or Chicago. Where is that endpoint in Pittsburgh, and what impact will that have? And it's a pretty big deal if you think about it. So we heard some people talk about consensus. I think that's going to be one of the hard things is from a consensus standpoint, where do you want to see the Hyperloop? Where would it end in the Pittsburgh region? The next discussion we had was talking about would it operate more like the Pittsburgh, like the greater Pittsburgh, the international airport, or would it be more like a transit-oriented development in whatever location it might be? So when you look at those impacts, you're thinking, okay, how am I going to get these people to whatever point we decide in the Pittsburgh region of where that touchdown point is going to be? So again, thinking about the technology and being able to move people in and out of this area very quickly using some of the latest technology would obviously be paramount, because you're going to have, if there's going to be an endpoint, we don't want to stop this thing. We want it to be more like bus rapid transit. You want to be able to get to that point as quickly as possible. You don't want to stop. If you're going 700 miles an hour, there aren't going to be too many stops between here and Columbus and Chicago. So that's another place where we kind of got hung up on. And then we talked a little bit about ownership. Who's responsible for this? Who's running it? Are we handling it like a transit agency? Is it privately owned? Would freight be in conflict with personal transportation? And what are the uses going to be? Is it going to be, am I going to go to Chicago to the theater district to see a play tonight and be back in Pittsburgh? Just like as if I had gone into downtown Pittsburgh, is it going to be that easy? So we kind of bounced around. So getting to the job creation, I think it was generally positive. There's going to certainly be some job creation. And it could be anywhere along that corridor. It's just how easy is it to get to that job, and we're assuming it is going to be easier than it is now. So you could possibly live in downtown Pittsburgh and work at the Honda plant, out near Columbus or somewhere, have access to that. From an age demographic standpoint, I think Chuck kind of touched on a lot of the things that we talked about. Was that, from you're definitely going to see that shift. We're going to see that shift anyway. We think that's going to accelerate that shift, very similar to if we had Amazon HQ2 here. Development patterns, we really got hung up there because we weren't sure, where's this touchdown pattern? Where is this? Where's the logistical? Where's the endpoint of the Hyperloop? That would have a big impact on development. If it was out in a more rural area, obviously you would get that focus to, maybe there's a spine that goes from downtown Pittsburgh to wherever this hub would be, wherever that station would be. From a modal option standpoint, again, I think it depending on where it is, does it make sense to have it near air cargo and some of those other things? Do you put it closer to industry? Again, we really didn't place our letter anywhere on that. By that time we were kind of lost. So But it is intriguing thinking about, again, where's that touchdown point? What is the impact going to be? How are you going to get to and from this? But there's a lot of things to consider, no doubt.
All right, thanks, Kevin. I promised my friends from Greene County the touchdown point would be in Waynesburg after we had the discussion. They basically told me what, I don't want to paraphrase, but I will, because I can't use the same language. They basically told me this really isn't going to, they had the same scenario, this isn't going to help us at all, it's all going to go up to Pittsburgh and it's not going to, but I told them that's the point of the discussion. How do we mitigate that? How do we make it so if you do it, that if it does happen, or a major infrastructure improvement of any type like this happens, how can we ensure that those places that may be left out or negatively impacted or less positively impacted can be? And this is a sort of exercise that we're going to be going through as we look at the next step of where we're headed with the expert panels and getting their input on exactly what this is. And for those of you that probably recognize the process, it's kind of changed a little, but the ex-military folks are going to recognize this is contingency planning. And we're looking at what are the contingencies that may come up, and how can we best address those if they do, to allow our plan and this plan to remain nimble. So when some of these begin to happen, we've had the discussion in the region that we know how best to be able to move forward and what we need to plan for. And that's really the difference in the planning exercise, the type of scenario planning that we're doing, that we've done in the past, to the type of scenario planning we're doing now, which is what are these scenarios and how can we remain nimble to be able to react to those when they do. So I want to thank you for that part, taking part in the exercise. Turn it back over to Larry to wrap up for the day. And thank you, we've remained on schedule, 2:26, look at that.
There you go, way to go.